All right, we're doing it. So, after talking to some people and putting up a poll on Instagram of what people would like a tutorial on, basically everybody said airs. So, today I'm at the beautiful Brattleboro, Vermont skate park, and I'm going to teach you guys how to air out of transition. All right, so I want to preface this tutorial by saying that everything I'm going to be telling you guys is from my own personal experience. I've been skating for almost 30 years now, and everything that I've learned to get to the point that I'm at right now has largely been self-taught. I have had help from other skaters, maybe giving me some advice on how to get into certain tricks, but most of it is me just doing things over and over again and kind of breaking down the process and working backwards from certain tricks to really fully understand them. So when I do this tutorial, like I said, this is my own personal opinion built off my own personal experience. And what I hope to do is to basically just kind of build a pathway for you to start seeing better results. And if this video helps, that's awesome. That's what I intend to do. If it doesn't, well, then, I don't want to be blamed if somebody doesn't become the skater they want to be and my tutorial didn't help them at all. I really hope it does help, but if it doesn't, well, I don't know. Message me on Instagram and maybe we can talk one-on-one and hopefully I can guide you through some things to get you to where you need to go. But like I said, this is just my personal opinion, and these are the things that I do that make skating work for me. And I also want to add that this video I wouldn't recommend to beginners. This is definitely going to be a tutorial for intermediate skaters, skaters that have been skating long enough to understand how to ride transition and are comfortable in a skate park environment. If you're a beginner, there's probably some key functions that you're going to want to learn before you move on to doing stuff like airing out. All right, now let's talk about some of the key mechanics that you're going to have to know in order to do these things properly. One, pump. You have to know how to pump. If you don't, you're going to have a really hard time trying to air out of quarter pipes. If you're a beginner, I recommend learning how to pump transition as early as possible because it's so crucial to learning how to ride a park properly. And if you get good at it early enough, it just makes everything else so much easier. And the other reason why pump is so crucial is because it's going to help you get the type of speed and the type of pop out of transition that you're looking for. If your pump game isn't very strong, there are some exercises that I will show later on in the video that'll help you get to where you want to be. All right. 2, pump, not jump. Pump, not jump. I want you to build that up in your head. I want that to be your mantra for this video. Pump, not jump. And the reason I say that is because when a lot of people try to air out, they tend to literally try to jump out of the transition. They think that that's what airing out is. They think it's going up, then jumping. It's not. That will result in you going too far out and sometimes landing flat, and it won't get you the results you're looking for. I'll explain that later on in the video as well. Pump, not jump. 3 is speed. Speed is pretty crucial to skating just altogether. Learning how to gauge your speed, learning how to, understand what type of speed you're going to get for certain situations, how big is the ramp, how much transition is there, how high do you want to go, and how comfortable are you with going fast versus going slow. And understanding that speed can actually make certain things easier. especially airing out. I know it might be scary, but having the proper amount of speed will make all of these functions fall into place a lot better. And 4 is spotting with your head. Turning your body with your head, not your shoulders and chest. What a lot of people do is they tend to lead with their shoulders, and that's all wrong, because when you do that, it throws your body out of alignment, and it's a lot more effort to do that than is needed to do this. When doing acrobatics, when airing out and trying to do spins and flips and stuff, you're honestly looking for as little movement as possible. You want to make the trick as easy and as streamlined as possible. And one of the shortcuts to get the results you're looking for is using your head to spot your landing, as opposed to forcing things with your chest and shoulders. And I'll explain that further in the rest of the video. All right, now that we've got those things out of the way, let's move on to the first one, pump. All right, now I'm gonna show you guys a good exercise for getting used to pumping transition. And the best thing to do is to find a half pipe. Even if you have like a small 4-foot little mini ramp, you can do this. Or even if you only have a singular quarter pipe, this will still help you out. I also want to say that I'm riding a flat setup right now because it will be easier to do this with flat. I'm not saying that anti-rocker skaters can't do this. I rode anti-rocker like religiously for like 12 years straight, and I was still managing to air out really good. It's just a lot easier. Riding park with a flat setup is awesome. Like, really nothing compares. But if you don't have a flat setup, that's fine. If I can do it, you can do it. All right, so what we're going to do is we're just going to start going back and forth. Don't worry about doing 180 or anything right now. Don't worry about turning around. I just want you to start going back and forth. So when going into a transition, you want to preload your knees and then start pushing. Push, 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 push. And you see, right there, I got so much momentum just from pumping that I just naturally aired out. That's the power of pumping transition. You don't have to try hard. You don't have to go very fast. You just need to learn how to push through the transition. Now, when you're approaching transition, you want to keep your knees bent. And when you get to the apex of the transition, what I mean by apex is where it starts to curve, and you want to push through the apex. What that does is it creates this like pocket of momentum that carries you through that transition. And that's the power you're going to get in order to go over the coping and ultimately air out. So like I said, a good exercise is just to go back and forth. Bend your knees and push. Bend your knees and push. Bend your knees and push. And that's all you're going to do. You're just going to do that for a while until you really start to feel it. And it's a push up, bend, push down. Push up, bend, push down. So you're gonna push up in the beginning, rebend your knees, and push up when you're coming back down. And that's to give you ultimate momentum all the way through. So push up, you go up, preload your knees again, and then push down through the apex. You're gonna do it twice. Let's try it again. Push up, push down, push up, push down, push up, push down, push up, push down. Now, you see how high I just aired without really trying? That's the power of pumping. Now let's move on to pump, not jump. The reason I'm really trying to drill that in is because Pumping is going to give you the momentum that carries you through the ramp. What a lot of people do is they keep their legs stiff, they ride up the ramp stiff, and then they jump. They don't pump at all. They keep their knees bent, they go up and they wait until they're at the top, and then they jump. You don't have to do that. If you pump through the transition, when you get to the apex, you can just kind of hang out and the ramp will carry you through. And to prove my point, I'm going to do improper technique on purpose to show you what I mean. See what I mean? It wasn't very good. I was real stiff. I wasn't able to get any height. Very rigid, very unnatural feeling. Now let's do an example of what happens when you actually pump through the transition. Holy shit. Now, that wasn't the cleanest air in the world, but you can definitely see a difference. And I honestly didn't even really pump that much. I pumped a little bit right at the apex, and that gave me so much more height. You can just see, as opposed to airing 6 inches out of the coping, I aired like, I don't know, 4 or 5 feet, and I really wasn't even trying. That's how powerful proper pumping technique is when it comes to skating transition. All right, now that moves on to the best part. Say it with me, pump, not jump. Now, I talked to you about pumping, and I showed you an example of how effective it can be. Now let's talk about the not jumping part. And I will show you improper technique where I jump and proper technique where I don't jump, and then we'll explain the differences. Oh shit, Jesus Christ. Whew. Yeah, you see that? That is what can happen when you jump. When you jump too hard, you come to the top of the quarter pipe and you push out, and that can throw you to flat, which can be super dangerous. I've made that mistake on some really high quarter pipes, and I have messed myself up so bad because of improper technique. Now, let's do a air where I pump through the transition and I let it carry me, and I'll make some small adjustments at the top near the coping in order to not so much jump, but to lift my legs out and let that momentum kind of push me right where I need to be. All right, way better. There's definitely some more subtle, in-depth mechanics going on there that I'll explain later in the video, but you can see that without jumping, I was able to stay in this general pocket of landing zone. And that's what you want to do. You definitely want to be able to stay within this general area for your landing as opposed to airing out super far and possibly breaking your ankles. Okay, a little bit of an editor's note here to try and explain what's going on in this clip because it might not have made a lot of sense to people seeing it without the proper context. So what's happening here is I'm not actually jumping. What I'm doing is I'm using all of the forward momentum from the pump through the transition and pressing off of my toes right below the coping to shoot me straight upwards.
So you're going to be generating all of that momentum and pressing forward right below the coping and counteracting that forward energy to shoot you straight up in the air. So if you do it properly, once you've finished your pump, you're going to press off your toes and use that energy to shoot you straight up. And hopefully, you're going to be able to come down and land in the same zone. That little pocket right below the coping is your launch zone and your landing zone. So, again, you bend your knees, you pump through the transition, you press off your toes, and you use all of that energy you've created to shoot you straight up. Once you've properly done the air and you've turned properly, you can hopefully land right in that same little pocket below the coping, and that's how you should be able to do a proper air.
All right, now let's talk about speed. Uh, Obviously, to anybody who's been skating for a while, speed is super important, but also speed kills. So, to understand how to gauge your speed when approaching transition is super important. Now, if you use proper technique when skating transition, like pump, not jump, you don't actually need a ton of speed to get certain results. I will do 2 airs, one going fairly slow and one going pretty fast, and we'll look at the differences. All right, now as you can see, in the first one where I was going kind of slow, I definitely had to pump a lot harder to get above the coping. And though it's proper technique, it still makes things a little harder. And in the faster one, didn't have to pump as hard and was able to use the pump not jump method to get up and above the coping pretty easily. All right, now let's move on to the last piece of the puzzle, spotting with your head, not leading with your chest and shoulders. This is a pretty amateur thing. I'm not bashing anyone when I say that, but if you look at gymnastics or any type of like aerial acrobatic sport, you'll notice that they all look with their heads and they keep their torso pretty straight. Obviously, there is some shoulder and chest movement in play, but when you want to spin and you want to accurately spot your landing, you have to use your head. So I'm going to do a couple airs. I'm going to do one where I don't spot my landing with my head, and I'm going to do another where I do, and we'll look at the differences. Whew. Okay, so the first one, it looked really bad, and I'm not trying to insult anybody who doesn't have a certain amount of skill when it comes to transition. That was genuinely what the air looked like when I used my shoulders to turn. If you saw, I tried to grab and I couldn't because my body was so locked up. And in the second air, you can see that I go up and I come down. And the reason for that is because I'm able to go up with my shoulders and chest square, perform my grab, and then look down at where I want to land, and the body just naturally does the rest. It's super important to really get that concept down. It will make your airs way more easier, and it'll make your style look way better. All right, now that we've talked about the proper techniques when it comes to airing out quarter pipes that are 6 to 8, maybe taller, let's get weird. Let's talk about how to air out on small stuff. 4-foot quarter pipes, 3-foot, 2-foot. The principles for some of these things stay the same, but some stuff is a little backwards. Where I said pump, not jump, we're actually going to pump and jump. And I know that sounds weird, but I'm going to draw out a diagram here to show you why pumping and jumping works for smaller transition. So when you approach something like this, you're going to pump early in the smallest pocket of transition. And right when you get about here, you're going to jump, but you're going to do your best to kind of counteract the forward momentum that you've created. And the reason for that is because since the angle is so shallow, if you just pump straight through this thing, you're going to land somewhere over there in the bushes. And if that's a launch box, well, that's pretty good. But for this, we want to stay inside of the quarter pipe. So all of that momentum that you're generating by pumping, you're going to want to counteract it. And if you counteract it properly by jumping at the right time, you'll meet somewhere in the middle and you'll go straight up. Now let's see if we can do that. Whew. Okay, so that worked out pretty well. And I actually had to jump pretty hard in order to stay inside of the quarter pipe. And the amount that I pushed off, you know, it would feel like you would jump totally out to flat. But because I built up so much speed and I was able to pump in the beginning, the counteractive force of my jump mixed with the momentum going forward inside of the ramp popped me straight up. And it actually popped me so good that I wound up catching the coping a little bit, which means that I actually went more forward than I wanted to, you know, despite how hard I jumped to try and stay in. That is how wonky it can get airing out of really small transition. Now, I've aired out of 3-foot quarter pipes with 6 inches of vert. I know that sounds crazy, but understanding these principles that I'm laying out, if you practice these things and you apply them like every time you go to the park, and you remember the things like pump, not jump, spotting with your head, not your shoulders, and you know, gauging your speed correctly, and just experimenting with the transition and getting the pump of your knees correct in the right spots at the right times, you can air anything. All right, well, that just about does it. That's basically everything I can think of. So like I said earlier, some of these things might not apply to everybody. Everybody has their own personal style, their own comfort levels, the way they like to do things. What this is just, you know, a game plan to try to get you to move in the right direction. Take some of these things that you find useful and don't use the things that you don't find useful, and basically mess with it, you know, develop your own way of doing it, develop your own style, because that's what I had to do. I don't know if this is the way, you know, an instructor would instruct somebody how to air out. This is just how I have figured it out for myself. And, you know, I'm my own person. I might not do things the same way someone else would, but hopefully some of these things can give you, hopefully some of these things that I laid out can give you a good idea of where to go. Well, thanks for watching. I hope to do more of these videos. If you found this useful, let me know in the comments. And if you really liked it, give it a thumbs up. and subscribe to my channel because I do plan on doing more of these. This was actually really fun, and it feels really good to know that I might have helped somebody somewhere skate a little better. All right, guys, I'll see you later.